and, bring more people, empower more people, build capacity, and then develop human capital. Then, of course, community engagement. Now, again, so 2017, we started 60 participants from Nigerian institution. 2017, we got Humboldt Foundation, grants, and then we started this. Also, we held this. Then 2018, we got Volkswagen Foundation grant. I'm saying this because so that to encourage some of us who are just, coming in to know that you can actually, do this. It's not rocket science. It's a matter of just, having the vision, the passion, and the drive to drive it. And of course, I must say, willing to already say, who are willing to fund your initiative. If you can put very strong proposal together, you are going to get funding. Of course, you must use your own money as well. Again, so we have this, scholar from abroad that came to Unilag to facilitate, the program, and then we have, participants from all over Nigeria, from outside Nigeria, from Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana. So in a way, we have developed people who are not only in Nigeria, we also develop people outside Nigeria, in West Africa, who also utilize some of the knowledge that they've been able to acquire while they attended our program. Then in 2019, there was this workshop in the Netherlands put together, and then we got scholars from different parts of Africa, and then we started something, that's a bit continental, okay, developing network for African DA scholars. Okay, so we have network for digital humanities in Africa. So if you are not, if you don't, you are not familiar with it, please, you can reach out to us so that I can be part of, this network. Now, 2021, we organized another summer school. You will see how gradually we are increasing the number of participants and people are benefiting from our program. Okay, so these are some of the participants. Then now I go to our projects. Number one, we've done a project on corpus-based analysis of Nigerian political discourse. We've done a project, or we're still working on that, digital mapping of creative world, what we call Lead Tech Lego. It is a technology-driven exploration of Lagos as a literary city by developing an interactive online map and downloadable app on Google Play. It creates a visual journey about the description of Lagos City, its people, places, lifestyle, culture, social and commercial activities in literary writings and creative work from the 1950s till date. So we are bringing together, novels written with setting in Lagos, and then we are trying to see how Lagos was at that time and how Lagos is now. Of course, we are creating visual map that can help, tourists and people to be able to enjoy and see, the transition. We call it from tradition to modernity. Okay, so between tradition and modernity. Then we also have a project, African Eco-Critical Narrative Corpus. It is a project that is new. We are getting funding from DFG in Germany, hopefully, and then we are going to collect, again, creative writing, talking about climate change, talking about environmental sustainability. I want to now digitize them and put them online that people can, see and follow the narrative. We are also collecting data from online. Then we also have project on digital public health communication. We have published some of these things in literature and they are online. Then very recently, as I mentioned earlier, with Professor Egbohari, we were involved in developing digital humanities curriculums for Nigerian universities. And then in practically all over the country now, most of our universities, we are teaching T8 courses at our undergraduate levels. And very soon, I'm sure that will move to program level. So again, I mentioned Lagos Summer School. So these are ways we are producing knowledge. These are ways we are trying to empower people. These are ways we are trying to develop this field. And then, of course, now talking about knowledge production, terms of publication, teaching and partnership. we have produced some publications that are available that people can view, people can take advantage of. And then, of course, I mentioned we have MOU with some partner universities in Nigeria, in South Africa, of course, and in Europe. So, of course, and also in the northern hemisphere over there. Now, very recent, last year, we have this book published, Digital Humanities, Basic Approaches to Principles, Perspective, and Practices. It provides a synthesis of scholarly principles, perspectives, and practice in digital humanities. It's an overview of over 1 decade of my productive activities in digital humanities. So the books, the publication is available, and we are currently using it to teach our students at the University of Lagos. So, and then, of course, some colleagues are also making use of them. Part of what we have done in terms of production of what I call intellectual infrastructure. Intellectual infrastructure. This is what we have. We've been able to produce some scholars who pass through our system, and they're now, outside there, either doing PhD or they've completed their PhD work, But as I mentioned in other context, the benefit of this is that these guys or these scholars are now available to actually give back. Each time we have a program, we have a workshop here, we have training here, they are always available to facilitate, to share knowledge. So you can see the multiplier effect of investing in human capital. So if you are going to start a center, please consider investing in scholars, young scholars, who can even do more than you. And that's what we are enjoying now at the University of Lagos. They are here and they are always available to give back to what we are doing here. Now, I move to as I move towards my concluding remarks now, let me now try to define African digital humanities. Number one, grounded in my decolonial digital humanities framework. African digital humanities is the epistemological configuration of humanistic inquiry through digital technology and methodology, deliberately centered on African knowledge systems, ontologies, and realities, and committed to dismantling the colonial architectures of knowledge production that have historically positioned Africa as the object, rather than the originating subject of scholarly inquiry. It is a critical practice that refuses the universalization of Western digital humanity paradigm, insisting instead on what I theorize as the deterritorialization of knowledge. That is, the strategic dissolution of inherited geopolitical and disparate boundaries that have confined African scholarship to the peripheries of global boundaries, of global digital knowledge production, so that Africa's epistemic tradition may circulate on their own terms at the very center of this humanities. So now, as we come together at this workshop, I want us to begin to see, how do we build this kind of thing? How do we focus more on producing knowledge, emanating from more, applying our own, traditional humanistic critical thinking and training and background in humanities to actually leverage, whatever technology is given us. Number two, on what over the year called digitality or materiality dialectic. I say African digital humanity is a dynamic and generative encounter between the digital and the material in African cultural life. That is a field of scholarship that investigates how digitality does not dissolve materiality, but is irreducibly entangled with it. Yeah, they must work together. It examines poets, fire, gods, oral tradition, WhatsApp spaces, and archival fragment as simultaneously material artifact and digital text, recognizing that African community produce meaning at the productive intersection of the tangible and the technological. They must work together. They must speak to each other, to one another. In this sense, ladies and gentlemen, African digital humanity is not simply the digitization of African heritage, but the theorization of a distinctly African digitality, the one shaped by infrastructural realities, by indigenous epistemology, by embodied cultural practices, and the enduring materiality of African expressive forms that resist the dematerializing logic of mainstream digital discourse. Well, two more. Number 3, Afrocenter pluriversity. African Digital Humanities is a pluriversal intellectual project that repositions the African continent rather, its languages, literatures, ecology, histories, and digital culture as both the epistemological ground and the generative horizon of humanistic digital inquiry, rejecting the mimicry of northern digital humanity model. It constitutes what I have envisioned as an Afrocentered disciplinary formation. One that draws compositional methodologies, corpus linguistics, discourse analysis, and transmedia scholarship into productive dialogue with African philosophical traditions, indigenous knowledge system, and the colonial theoretical framework, thereby produce scholarship that is simultaneously locally rooted and globally transformative. A pluriversity in what Walter McDonald said called digital humanity knowledge. Number 4, the empowerment practice. That's a vision that we have for African digital humanities. My other presenters, they can actually critique this and see how we can, expand this and see how this can work. Number 4, African digital humanity emancipatory scholarly discipline and institutional practice through which African researchers, educators, and community mobilize digital tools, technology, and methods to reclaim interpretive authority over African narratives, to reconfigure the terms of knowledge production, and advance what I call the democratization of digital humanistic practice. It is simultaneously an academic field, a civic commitment, cultural intervention, one that cultivates digital entrepreneurship, advances digital health humanities, theorizes AI within African ethical framework, and transform the legacies of the humanities into instruments of natural development and societal renaissance. At its core, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, African digital humanity is the scholarly articulation of Africa's right to inhabit the digital future on its own epistemological terms, not as a beneficiary of global technological charity, but as an originating, theorizing, and world-making intellectual tradition. I believe if we can share these four perspectives and we can run with them, I'm sure that we can push this boundary further, we can expand this horizon, and we can do a lot with our collaborative effort, all over the world, wherever you are. Now, I'm happy to announce that as a result of some of these modest efforts over the years, just last Wednesday, the University of Lagos Senate has approved the commencement of postgraduate programs in digital humanities at the University of Lagos from 2026-27, this upcoming academic year. So you want to take a degree in PGD in digital humanities, Master of Arts in Humanities, PhD in Humanities, please do reach out to us, and we are ready to admit you, and we are ready to, bring you to the family, and we can do this together. Now, as I try to move toward the end of my presentation, the colonial digital humanities, we need to center African epistemology. Okay, what Tiongo says, the decolonization of knowledge is not simply about adding African content to existing framework, but about fundamentally transforming the architecture of knowing. And esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we now have what it takes to actually transform the architecture of our epistemology, of our indigenous knowledge system. And we can do this. We can take control, have language sovereignty, we can indigenous knowledge system, community control, archiving, critical algorithm studies. These are ways I believe we can do it. The future is very bright if we can actually work on some of the projections that we are making here, and we can work together to accomplish this. So these are theoretical methodological architecture of our research projects. Okay, can see computer sciences, corpus linguistics, post-colonial humanities, decolonial theory, and these are ways that we try to bring this together to put this mandate. Finally, the prospects. What are the benefits of DH scholarship in Africa? Number one, gradual capacity building through these money programs and projects impacting educational, socio-economic, and political development in Africa. Number two, a new army of scholars. We can raise that with skills and with skill set and tools to transform the research space and development ecosystem in Africa. Number three, we can begin to engage more digitization projects that become popular and can benefit society. Number four, we can adopt the technology-driven approaches that can transform our research endeavor. We can contribute to science, to technology and innovation, and it's not going to be limited to in STEM discipline alone. This scholar can provide meaningful contribution to sustainable development goals. Multinational, multidisciplinary, multisectoral, and multilateral collaboration are increasing among scholars in the humanities in Africa. And we are also asking our colleagues in the diaspora to join us. We can explore huge, rich social and cultural data that can help to move Africa forward. Conclusion, our model. Build institution, decolonize by design, collaboration across borders. These are ways that UNILAG has been able to pioneer and sustain the momentum over the last 6 years. So we're inviting you to join us, to work with us in building an African-led, global network digital humanity ecosystem that can benefit not only scholars here, but scholars all over the world. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. This was enlightening, and it came in the most simple way it can ever come. Thank you for taking your time also for the projections to amazing work. Thank you so much, Prof. We are grateful. So quickly, for those that joined us, Professor Davis, Okpe David, sorry, Professor Okpe David just finished speaking on digital humanities and knowledge production, giving us what has been ongoing in UNILAG at the Center of Digital Humanities at UNILAG. And then I think for me, what I was able to pick is the part that he emphasized on the decolonization of African of digital humanities, and then he spoke expressly on that, ran us through the project UNILAG has offered and is still offering, their collaboration and student exchange course programs too, and how that students who have benefited from mentorship also are doing wonderful things across the globe. But for me, I think I should also end with one of his, before we entertain questions. One of the last words he said that African digital humanities is the scholarly articulation of Africa's rights to inhabit the digital future of its own epistemological terms. And he said, not as a beneficiary of global technology charity, but as an originating, theorizing, and word-making intellectual tradition. And I think for some of us as upcoming scholars and young scholars, this might be what we want to basically hold on to in our various disciplines. And lest I forget also, Prof also opened us up to the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary prospect of digital humanities, so that I don't begin to give a lecture after another lecture again. So we'll just go straight to questions. I'm trying to go through the chat now to see if there are questions, but I think there is one coming from Michael Ikemode. My name is Michael Ikemode, and I have a background in comparative religions. I would like to ask how digital humanities method like text analysis, digital archiving, and mapping can help explore religious texts, traditions, and contemporary issues. It's on the chat box. Or do you want me to read it again, Prof? I have a background in comparative religions. I would like to.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if there's anyone also who will be willing to ask questions, but they want to do it on their own. So you could raise your hands if that's what you want to do. So, Prof, you can answer while we hope that other persons with questions would. You're welcome, sir.
Now, okay. There's also another one from Ike Washuku. Now, very quickly, let me take you back to actually the history.
I think we lost Prof again to network.
DH.
Okay.
You remember, as we know. So he was interested in using developing that, and then so it was digitizing that and trying to see some keywords, and then it was able to the text, or what I call e-product. Okay, so when we are talking about whether you are in religion, you are in history, you are in whichever discipline you find yourself, whatever discipline you find yourself, you can actually apply these humanities tools to do text analysis. You can do keyword in context analysis. You can do concordancy. For instance, you are looking at, let me take the Bible text, for instance. If you look at New Testament, and now map New Testament and to look for keywords, or you want to map, the history of the early church, you have tools in these humanities that help you to do that easily. One thing that DH tools enable us to do is to be able to handle large data, big data. So what you may not ordinarily be able to analyze or discover manually, we have software now. Okay, we have sketch engine, we have Voyant tools, we have Wordsmith, we have a number of, so many of them now, that all you need to do is to translate or transform your raw text into TXT file or machine readable text, and then you feed it into the software and you query the software, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed, at what the software will generate for you. Whatever question you are trying to look for, you can actually. So there is no field in the humanities that we don't have the right tools that we can use to actually analyze the text and develop whatever you want to do. But remember, anything you are trying to do must be based on your research question. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Okay, so that will inform the kind of tools you are going to use. It will inform the kind of methodology and the tools that you are going to apply. So whichever field you find yourself, you can actually apply TA tools and technology to do that very easily, and you're going to achieve amazing results within a very short time. That, of course, digitization is there, and a number of other projects you can do through DH. I hope I've addressed the question of Michael Ekemodi.
Okay. Yes, sir. My name is Deborah Lawal. For someone with a PhD in music, what qualifications would that person need to apply in the newly approved DH programs? Also, would the person have to start from the diploma level?
Sorry, please, can you take that question again, please?
Yeah, she said, my name is Deborah Lawal. For someone with a PhD in music, what qualifications would that person need to apply in the newly approved DH programs? Also, would the person have to start from the diploma level?
Not necessarily. I think you may need to actually see us. Yeah, we are trying to develop the entry requirements, but basically we are open to accommodate and admit scholars from different backgrounds. We're going to look at your credentials, your background, and then your bias or your interest in technology, in software. One of the things we have in the program will be, we have a colleague from computer science that will be taking some courses in basic programming for humanities. Okay, so it will involve coding, not very technical. So, but don't worry, you are free to just see us, and then we're able to determine after interviewing you, we can determine whether we can bring you in to masters, direct masters. We are going to encourage most people without background in DH to start from the PGD level, so that they'll be able to actually develop the competence and the skill to be able to move. Because this program will be very intensive and will be project focused. So you must be able to develop a DH project at the end of your program. That's one of the requirements. And so that means you must learn some basic skill in ICT, in programming, in R software, in Python, and I can assure you, they're not very difficult. I went through, I did a bit of Python and now anyway. So
I think there's one last one.
Ambolu, you're not that audible. Can you adjust your mic settings?
Oh, sorry about that. What one now?
A bit.
Okay. So we have just one more question, and I think this is going to be the last, so that we can move to the next session. This is from Afis Toperaji. Is asking, could Prof please explain the intersection of history and DH? How can one become globally relevant using this? Are there useful website organizations dedicated to this? Maybe a quick one. What's the duration for the program too? For, I guess, the program that was just approved by the university.
Okay, one by one. Now, yes, for those in history, let me give you an example of a project you can do. For instance, now you are trying to, you collect historical texts on slave trade or Atlantic slave trade in Nigeria, and then you are trying to identify some key players during that period. So you are collecting, very large amount of data. So you have software that can help you to just easily, identify key players during the period without you going through all the text. Okay, and you can do visualization of that through a specific software dedicated for that. There are so many things you can do. Either you are background in history, whatever, a lot of things. I'm sorry, if you can just lay your hand on my book, you can, some of the things I've mentioned them, how TH apply to each discipline in the humanities. Therefore, the duration of the program for PGD, 3 semesters, hopefully, MA 3 semesters, of course, PhD, 3 years minimum, and then, of course, so that's just it. So 3 semesters, and then PhD normal. It's just the normal way, the duration for program UNILA, because the program is being moderated by our School of Postgraduate Studies. So we're not the one doing it. So they want moderated. So we follow University of Lagos requirements and other things that guide postgraduate programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. To the person who asked about how we can get the book, a mail which belongs to Prof has been dropped, so you could actually send a mail to that email address. And quick one, Prof, I was going to look at the aspect of decolonization or yes, and for me, based on, I don't know how it goes or how it operates. I'm speaking from the angle of the donors now, or the funders of this project, because I feel for every digital humanity project that we do, and having discussed that Africa is like the center of where we have so many of these records. And I know that there's going to be a sort of give and take, because they give the money to fund this project and they get the information. And I feel the resource is actually in the information and the validity of it. So how do you think having international organizations fund this, don't you think it has future implications on African emancipation or African freedom that we are actually projecting? And at the same end, so that we do not even become those who archive or get this information into, get this data into get this information into, get the data into information, and then at the point of it, we are now at the mercy of the international community to also get it back or to probably have access to it. So what do you, based on your expertise, how do you think we can also raise African donors to buy this idea, sell it to African donors, and also get them to fund it? And then we can own claim of this project, and then we can also sell it back to the West. I don't know if you have something to say about that, sir.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very serious question. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, that has been the serious challenge we face as researchers here, and I'm sure the Professor Buhari can attest to that. The fact that, unfortunately, many of our corporate organizations, they don't appreciate research. I remember when we started, we approached a telecom company, very big telecom company, indigenous telecom company to fund our summer school, but we couldn't get anything from them. Well, you could see some of them funding other things. What I would say is that we don't give up. There are still some organizations I know. Maybe Professor Buhari can give us, can talk to that a bit. I know Tech Fund is supporting research seriously now. So we need to look inward and see how we can actually encourage some of our indigenous companies here to actually support research and fund research. Yes, I agree with you. The concern is there. When we get funding from outside the country, do we have complete ownership of the products? Yeah, but again, I know that you can negotiate this based on the guidelines that the funders will give. And so if the conditions are not acceptable to you, of course, I mean, they go with their money. We can always get alternative ways of funding our research. So we have to be careful with that. I agree with you. We don't sell our heritage, but I know that there are other ways we can handle those challenges. I think Prof wants to weigh in into this conversation. Thank you, Prof. Sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to note that the recent agreement that the Academic Staff Union had with the federal government involves the 1% tax on profits of all formal businesses in Nigeria, which will amount to almost 4 trillion naira a year for research. So we will have to be able to convince government that we have the capacity to spend that money on productive ventures. Just like the third fund was generated by negotiations between ASU and government. Now we have the research fund that is going to come almost 4 trillion. And I don't know if the academia as constituted today has that capacity to absorb 4 trillion for research. So it means that we need to really wake up and develop very serious research ideas that will transform the nation and generate economic transformation and productivity. So that's really one on ground. We have to look at the fact of funding. The nature of our political economy is not the same as you have in the US and so on, and in the OECD country. So we need to look out and understand exactly what will work for our country. So what will work is basically what the Academic Staff Union and the federal government has reached out for. Because what the local companies, most of them simply just get what do you call it from they get licenses to do what they do because their businesses are not based on innovation. They just simply want to sell things, and that's why they market Big Brother Africa, and they market all kinds of music shows that you see on campus and so on and so forth. But when it comes to research, that's a critical. The other thing I need to say is that we have to do a little bit more as well to be able to help companies to see the relevance of what we are doing, how it's going to connect with their businesses. We have not been very good at that. We simply moralize about the responsibility of these businesses, and I don't think morality is at the soul of the business. All these business ventures, they want profit, and so we have to make whatever it is we are doing, we have to sell it to them in such a way that they can see that it's to their advantage. The last thing I want to say about this thing is that why would a business organization fund a research when they can come and attend your conferences and listen to you say things that are groundbreaking and shattering on radio and television, and then go and implement those things themselves? So the whole business of copywriting and licensing, we've not really done well as academics. I remember many years ago, I came up with so many ideas that are being implemented by the banks today. And these things was presented in a postgraduate lecture series that we delivered at UR. All of a sudden, I saw telecoms company banks implementing some of these ideas. But because there was no real
patents.
No patents. This was just ideas because we believe as a so it is like flaring, ideas flaring. And so that's has been happening at every conferences, at every public events that where we make what do you call it, even like this, for instance, if you whatever you are saying here, for instance, you have no license about anything, you may make a profound statement here today and somebody will get a good idea out of it. You can say that is part of our business to society, but in a society where people have some limited level of conscience in terms of these things, you should go back to these same individuals and ask for some level of collaboration or to give them some credit. But that's not what happens. In this regard as well, you can make a proposal to government, for instance, and they say, come and make a presentation. You go ahead and make the presentation, and then later on you discover that you've been played around here and there, and they appear not to be interested. Then one day in front of the television, NTA, you will hear the same ideas or a version of it being packaged and presented like some new things by a business enterprise, which government is patronizing, and nobody gives reference to you. So we need to address some of these issues. There is a lot of things that are coming out of the academy, and I really want people to understand that. But we have to see exactly how these intellectual properties are properly channeled in such a way that even if you don't get paid for it, but there should be some level of recognition. Because if the recognitions are there by these businesses, we will at least get some social capital out of this. Sorry that I'm talking a little bit longer. Now let's even go to the informal sector. A lot of the innovations that you today are seeing massified by Nigerian retail sector and they were all generated by the informal sector or people, so-called people who are illiterate. Whether you talk about pure water, which we rebranded as sachet water, whether you talk about belebe, which is the sachet hot drink, these are all informal sector innovations in retail that they have introduced in order, but all of a sudden with packaging, you see a number of things. There is no cultural assets, no cultural recognition, no recognition for innovation at the level of the cultural economy. So I think digital humanities, that's why I like what you have said, sir, that we need to go beyond simply aggregating ideas or simply implementing what you call it technology. Well, at the level of epistemology, at the level of ontology. I gave a talk at the Nigeria Academy of Letters, which I hope to publish, is to see that what we think that what we are doing in many areas are new. What we have lost is basically the epistemic independence. We've lost it. And we have to regenerate this thing in order for us to create the debate, because the technology itself will only do what we can use it for. And what we can use it for is a function of what we understand that we can do. So let me just be quiet now, because I'm supposed to be sitting on the chair in this event. I'm not talking too much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That's a beautiful one. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And thank you so much, Professor Okpa Davids. We are grateful to have you on board and to given the wonderful presentation. So we hope that when next we call you, you would respond to our call. Thank you, sir. So a
Thank
quick
you
one
very much.
without,
I appreciate it.
yes, sir. And a quick one without much delay. We already have Dr. Yeku. I hope I pronounced that well, sir. On standby for us, and his citation has been read earlier on, so we wouldn't bother you with that again. So over to you, Dr. Yeku.
Thank you so much. I am grateful for the opportunity to be joining this important event, and I've learned a lot listening to Professor Tunde Okpebholo and Professor Bokari. Thank you so much. Something Professor Bokari said in particular gets me thinking, and that's the idea that in the real sense of things, nothing is really new. And I think that's a premise for some of the things I want to share in the next several minutes. Just to say that there's often the assumption that the newness of new media translates to the newness of everything, when in actual sense, most of the things you have today in the context of DH, in the context of media studies, are things we have engaged with conceptually in the frameworks of old media and cultural forms. So thank you again, Professor Ebukar. I thought that was profound. I just want to say quickly that what I want to do, because of the limited time, is just to describe my sense of DH and to describe something a bit theoretical. In the course of some of the interventions I hope I can make, I'll probably mention some actual projects that instantiates, some of these things and hopefully contribute to some of the important, presentation and points Prof made earlier, Professor Tunde. So for me, DH, and I think Professor Davis has mentioned this, DH is this application of computational tools and methods to traditional humanities, research. And that simply means we're thinking of how computers and technological forms can become visible in the context of the kind of questions we ask, say, in literature, in philosophy, in history. And for me, that's really important, right? Because you're making sense of the cultural record through digital methods, right? And to be honest with you, I think this is something people have always done in the Nigerian context. So in the 90s, for example, the cultural technologists, Dr. Tunde Adegbola, was doing important work with computational linguistics in Nigeria. And as far back as the 2000s, I was at the Institute of African Studies with Professor Shola Olorunyomi, and we're digitizing film posters, we're digitizing rare historical materials, and all of these people may not have called it digital humanities, but that was exactly what they were doing. Again, to re-articulate the point about the newness of things. Most of these things are not necessarily new. I think the issue is in terms of naming, the politics of naming. Do you name what you do as DH or not? So I think it's important to say that it's bringing digital methods and tools to bear upon traditional humanities questions and disciplines is basically what people would do DH. That's what they do. So whether you call it digital humanities or humanities computing, as it was called some decades ago before it became mainstreamed as a DH. Humanities computing is basically how digital technologies become applied to scholarly, pedagogical, and public engagement with cultural and historical materials. That would mean, for example, and to go back to one of the questions earlier about how DH is important for historical research, that would mean, for example, that we can think about the work of we could call him a public historian, Fuad Lawal, who started archiving.ng. For people who know archiving.ng, you can go online, get on Google and just search archiving.ng. It's this web platform or digital archive that digitizes Nigerian newspapers. And the intention of this is basically to make Nigerian history accessible to everyone. So if you go on archiving.ng, you have newspapers that go back to the 60s, that go back to the 70s, the military era, and early 90s up to the moment to recapture a sense of the past, right? So using OCR, optical character resolution, using large-scale scanning technologies to recapture Nigerian history, digitizing newspapers, making them accessible to AI platforms is one example of what you might call using digital technology to publicly engage with historical materials. And I think that's really important in terms of understanding what the digital humanities is and how it manifests in a Nigerian framework. In 2019 also, I started a project I called Digital Nollywood. And the goal of Digital Nollywood is to reconstruct the material history of Nollywood, right? And again, I have to say this, that project began at the Institute of African Studies. People like, again, Shola Oloriyomi were collecting film posters, digitizing them, working with Tunde Kalani's Mainframe Productions. And I got in touch with TK and many other film directors later when I wanted to start Digital Nollywood to say, rather than throw away all of these film posters, can we digitize them just to think about what a material history of Nollywood would look like? You know, Nollywood scholarship is a big thing of film scholars today. But I was thinking about a way to do Nollywood scholarship that's appropriated DH2s, digital technologies. So what I did was to create an archive using a platform called Omeka. And I could put all of these links and projects I've mentioned in the chat later for those who might be interested. But the point is, Digital Nollywood was created to think about the history of film in Nigeria at a material level. Anybody who knows Nollywood knows that Nollywood is the second biggest film industry in the world in terms of production output. But the irony or the paradox here is that the proliferation of Nollywood is possible at the expense of the disappearance of its materiality. So the film posters that enabled early Nollywood, as a matter of fact, the film posters that enabled the celluloid tradition pre-Nollywood, all of those things are things people discard, right? You go on, if you're in Ibadan or Lagos, anyway, you see film posters on the floor, you see them on the walls. We imagine them as defacing the urban landscape. We imagine them as trash. So my work is to see how, in the context of digital Nollywood, how film posters can be encountered as print artifacts that make possible a technological recovery of the history of Nollywood. So digital Nollywood, again, is one example of how DH manifests in the Nigerian framework. And I give this example again just to say that the approaches to the digital humanities are varied. Some people do what you call computational textual analysis. And that means you use, say, you use a platform like, say, Voyant. I could put, again, Voyant in the chat later. I see somebody is trying to help me put some of these links here. There's archiving.ng in the chat. I just put Voyant also in the chat. Voyant is a platform that allows you to do computational text analysis. And that means, for example, that you have a machine-readable version of, say, Things Fall Apart. And you are able to use this particular platform to do all kinds of analysis that help or enable your traditional close reading of Things Fall Apart. I always like to say this, that the digital humanities is not a discipline that necessarily displaces what we do in the humanities, like traditional methods of close reading of text. What I think DH does, say through computational text analysis or through digital mapping, would be to offer supplementary modes of reading, supplementary modes of engaging with cultural and historical materials. So Voyant is a good example of a tool that allows you to do computational text analysis. Other platforms do this also. In the age of AI, it's even more seamless. You can use AI to do sentiment analysis. You can use AI to do all kinds of things with a test. You can ask AI to help you recognize patterns and what the Italian scholar Frank Moretti called distant reading. So distant reading, for example, is basically using platforms again, like or any computational space to perform kind of a close reading of a test. It does a close reading for you by paying attention to quantitative patterns to extract meanings. Again, this is one major approach to the digital humanities for people who do literary analysis or even corpus-based linguistics. Beyond computational textual studies or textual analysis, some people do digital mapping. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Ademide Adelusi, who wrote a book on the city of Lagos, Imagine Lagos. And what Ademide does in that excellent work is to produce a digital mapping of Lagos. So the book is a monograph about Lagos from the perspective of data visualization, but there's also the fact that the book has an important digital component. So if you put Imagine Lagos on Google, it gives you the book. You can buy the printed text, but you also have the different maps that are discussed in the book. You have them digitized. You have them graphically presented in terms of the affordances of these historical maps of Lagos. And I think that's a good example of what, again, people can do. You can choose to read Soyinka's Ake and say you want to map all the places that are mentioned in this particular memoir, and that would be a good DH project for example, for people who are thinking about how DH connects to what they do in literary analysis. You could decide to say, okay, I'm reading the in San Fernando, a Caribbean novel, and then I want to map every place that's been mentioned using basic mapping tools and platforms online. I mentioned that as another major approach to the digital humanities. The one area, apart from data visualization, digital mapping, computational text analysis, the one area I'm familiar with the most is, of course, digital archives, and if like critical DH and post-colonial DH. And I'll come to post-colonial DH quickly. I do want to talk about digital archives, which is really common. You have this set of historical materials and data. You create a digital archive using simple platforms like maybe Omeka, a data management platform, or say even using WordPress. A lot of DH projects use WordPress. A lot of DH projects use platforms like Wax. And all you're doing is to organize knowledge digitally, present knowledge in such a way that is accessible to the public. You're creating metadata to help describe the particular kinds of knowledge you are organizing online. So DH has a lot to do with the organization and presentation of knowledge using digital tools and what have you. The last part, or just to mention one final approach, is what people call critical digital humanities or post-colonial digital humanities. And this is one area in which developing the African digital humanities programs at KU has been very dear to my heart. And that's because I have had the opportunity to write extensively on this, just thinking about what it means to do DH in a post-colonial environment where we grapple with questions of access, where you grapple with questions of coloniality. Somebody asked a question earlier about what it means to have African cultural and historical forms vulnerable, say, to platform capitalism, but also vulnerable to again, algorithmic colonization. These are important questions in the context of, critical DH or post-colonial DH that invite us to think about the politics, the epistemic politics of knowledge production in digital contexts. I guess a good place to wrap this up is just to think about common themes in DH, the use of digital tools and methods, like I've said, and again to think of DH as an interdisciplinary field, right? So my training is in literary studies, but I just completed an essay on the history of West Africa and artificial intelligence, and I don't do historical study. I've previously written an article on the use of social media images to understand West African urban history. And I'm just saying all of this to say that as somebody who is trained in literary studies, who does cultural studies, I find myself doing a lot of work in relation to historical memory, relation to historical research, and that again affirms the interdisciplinary nature of DH. You have a lot of scholars who collaborate because again, collaboration is another common theme in digital research. I do want to emphasize that DH means you are building and making something, right? So when I arrived at the University of Kansas, employed as a professor of African Digital Humanities, it was important to actually do something. So I had to learn a bit of programming, do some coding, and I had to create a digital archive. So if you're doing digital humanities, like Professor Davis emphasized earlier, you do have to engage with tools, right? At the same time, I know that a lot of people who do digital humanities do not necessarily engage with tools. They just theorize the fields and focus on the more epistemological dimensions of things. But the truth is that these things are actually connected. In colloquial terms, it's described as the tension between yakking, you're doing all the talking, versus hacking. So that you yak or you hack, the most important thing is that you're kind of involved in the production of knowledge. I still have about 3 minutes, so I'll just wrap up by saying, again, digital humanities is community driven in terms of themes. It's a work of collaboration. And I do want to say again that my reading of the technological landscape in the West African and the African context is that a lot of people who are doing important work that can be useful for the digital humanities. I've always said that there are people who are active in the tech sector in Lagos who can be called upon for important work of collaboration, right? So the challenge for all of us is to see how people who create technological products in the Nigerian context can be invited to be in discussion and in collaboration with the academic community, because we have a lot of innovative and technological and digitally savvy actors in the Nigerian context, and I'm always emphasizing the need for collaboration. The most important and successful DH projects anywhere in the world are works of collaboration. The final thing I do want to say is that DH involves a lot of open source and accessibility labor. You have to make your work open source. Your work needs to be accessible, and you are democratizing the means of knowledge production, but you're also democratizing access to knowledge and to how knowledge is presented. Because of time, I can't go into the last thing I want to talk about, which is the idea of minimal computing. What are the things we need to... It's a more practical dimension of DH, which basically asks us to think about how to do DH in an environment where you do not actually have the funding or the infrastructural and technological resources you need. So what does that mean, and how can we still do DH in that kind of low resource context? But because of time, I'll just wrap things up and hopefully get some questions to invite more reflections from me. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. So grateful for that. I feel it would be nice.
Bolu, the audio thing is on again. We can hear you.
Sorry. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Yeko, for your time. Wonderful work. I wouldn't want to recap many of the things he has said, but I feel that if you can quickly help us just also talk about that minimal computing, especially for some of us who are on this side of Africa, and considering the challenges that we have. But one thing that stood out for me is that the benefit and prospect of DH are endless. So the more you think about it, the more you see what you can do with it. So quick question is from from Ebele Okafor. Do you have platforms for analysis of Igbo text as there are for English? I think that's the one we have here. Okay, then a comment from two other persons, which is on the chat box. Yes, sir.
So the thing about platforms for Igbo test is that you do need to have speakers of Igbo, people who have data set in Igbo, building these platforms themselves and organizing it around, the Igbo language. So the short answer is no, not because the platforms cannot exist, but because we're still waiting for somebody to build those kind of platforms. Kolatu, for example, has a platform he calls yorubaNames.com, a Yoruba language-driven project that, again, decenters the hegemony of English as the default language of the digital humanities, right? Nobody will build those platforms for you because they are not interested in those things. Professor Bukari was talking about, the availability of this huge amount of money. We need platforms to engage those kind of resources. Building those platforms is something we must do ourselves. So the short answer is that the guys who fund DH projects in the West, in Europe, are probably more driven by the need to preserve their own cultural heritage before they get to yours. So the way I put it is, we need to put our money where our decolonial mouth is, right? We need to be able to fund our own initiatives and platforms and projects. So again, short answer is no, but it doesn't mean we cannot build one. We have the data sets. We just need to get somebody interested in that kind of project. In digital Nollywood, I have a section, an oral history section that I've called Ọ̀rọ̀ lẹ́nu àwọn àgbà òṣèré Yoruba. And basically that means thinking about the oral history of film veterans. So we went around the country, interviewed some veteran Yoruba Nollywood, actors, asking them their experiences during the traveling theater tradition, their transition into Nollywood and stuff like that. And that project is essentially in Yoruba with little translation into English, right? So I think there's a lot of work for us to be done, and that work can be done if we get to it, I think.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. I still would appeal that I would still appeal if you could actually talk about the minimal computing, because I think it has to do with one of the questions and one of the things you have said. But let me read out this question by John. It says, sir, what major skills do young scholars like me need to be proficient in as I approach digital archival projects? What would make me stand out?
I think a knowledge of the tool you're using is important, right? The moment you identify a platform for your project, you want to learn everything you should learn about the project. And the thing about DH is that DH involves a lot of hands-on experimental work. You have to get your hands soiled, quote unquote. And that means, ingratiating yourself into the technological architecture itself. You have to explore, right? I've seen that in DH you can get programmers to do things for you, but you can also learn the tools over time. So you give it time, you learn the tools, and the truth is, if you don't learn, I learned coding many years ago to do DH work, but today I've not been doing a lot of that, and I've probably forgotten those things. So if you don't use it, you lose it. For DH work, to get grounded in this, you need to read, you need to be conversant with the scholarship in the area, but you also need to learn tools. And that means actually exploring and watching videos, asking questions, collaborating with other people. But don't forget, John, collaboration is really important. I would, for example, welcome somebody who works as a programmer who is interested in learning the more theoretical and, conceptual side of things, right? Rather than waste my time trying to learn more tools when there are endless tools to learn. I've been thinking recently about a digital critical edition of On Nature Market literary pamphlet, and that project has still not, got off the ground because I haven't really had time to do it. What I want to do is and I mean, the KU library has several pamphlets. What I want to do is to rewrite this pamphlet, quote unquote, and make them accessible to a new generation of users. So that kind of project will give you the original pamphlet, the author, and then give you those same pamphlets. And if anything about the nature pamphlet, it is the collective authorship, it is the use of pidgin English in a number of places, or what you might call Nigerian English. And I know Professor Bukari is an expert here. So you imagine what it means to take that kind of project, translate it into a digital space where people can access that, all of this pamphlet, and then analysis of the thematic underpinnings of the pamphlet themselves become possible because you have them digitized. They go to more places. I say all of this just to say that if I had somebody who are the technical skills, I'll focus on the interpretive skills, right? But without that kind of person, I'm forced to go, to go learn that. Because of time, I want to go back to minimal computing since you have asked me to address it. So two important post-colonial DH theorists, Alex Gill and Rupika Risam, and these are people that we have collaborated with. I think Alex Gill has attended the summer school in Lagos, the one Professor Tunde Davis organizes. They are the main names when you think about minimal computing. I like to quote something, their description of it. They describe minimal computing as a mode of thinking about digital humanities praxis that resists the idea that innovation is defined by newness, defined by scale or scope. So broadly speaking, it connotes digital humanities work that is undertaken in the context of some set of constraints. These constraints could include lack of access to hardware or software. It could be lack of network capacity or even technical education. It could just be funding constraints. So they imagine that to do DH in that kind of environment where there's no funding, there's no technical skill, there's no technical education or expertise, you ask yourself 4 questions. Number 1 is, what do we need? What do we need to get? We have identified these archives, these private archives somewhere in Ibadan. I would think this work should be accessible to everybody. Now, what do we need to get this project done? This question helps us identify the essential requirements for completing the project. How do we avoid unnecessary complexity that comes with relying on cutting-edge technologies? I'll go back to Fuad Lawa's example, archiving.ng. When he wanted to digitize newspapers, he basically started by traveling abroad to get this very solid cutting-edge scanner. Now, transporting the digital scanner from, I think, Germany to Nigeria was a big deal. As far as it was concerned, this was necessary for the kind of large-scale infrastructure building work he's interested in doing. And archiving.ng is a big deal today, and it's one of the digital initiatives I refer to in a Nigerian context to say that DH is happening in Nigeria already. And I imagine that today, this kind of talk should have Fuad Lawal as a speaker. What are you doing? How can we duplicate this kind of large-scale interventions at a small-scale level, right? So the first question is, what do we need to get this DH project or initiative going? The second question will be, what do we have? So the question should focus to the resources already available, right? I have social media. Social media is a funny platform because my data is vulnerable to data extraction. But perhaps I could still organize an archive around social media, like a lot of people have done. So if you go online, you see Nigerian Nostalgia Project. I know some people are familiar with that project, and I've written on that. You see Ugandan history on X or Twitter. You go on Instagram. So you have a lot of social media archives that are popping up. It's basically minimal computing. People are saying, what do we have? We don't have the technological means to create a digital platform, but I know I can organize a Facebook group or community and encourage a sense of historicity. People can post pictures. We can have an audiovisual archive within a social media space that wasn't intended as an archive. But in the real sense of things, because I don't have the technical expertise and not the resources, I can actually use social media. So it's basically using what I have to do what I want to do. The third question is, what must we prioritize? So this question emphasizes the importance of determining the most critical aspect of a project, such that the decisions we make align with the constraints where commonsensical about our approach, right? And we emphasize the most important thing to get the work done, given the constraints we have. And the last question is, what are we willing to give up? What are we willing to give up? Because again, we have to acknowledge the need to make trade-offs, focusing on, again, practical and achievable solutions that make our project sustainable. So those are the four major, questions that constitute the heuristics of minimal computing. What do we need? What do we have? What must we prioritize? What are we willing to give up? And I'll just give a final example to instantiate this. You can create a static website. I attended a workshop recently, and everything about the event was publicized, made available online using a static website. A static website does not need the traditional database that is a core infrastructure for your normal website, right? It's basically regenerates, from a static technological hub. GitHub, for example, supports a lot of static websites, and it becomes important, therefore, to be able to say you carry your database along. So I can create a database that I have on a thumb drive, such that I am in Lagos today. If there's no power, for instance, there's no strong Wi-Fi, and I know that there's strong Wi-Fi in Nigeria. I know that power is improving some places, so I'm not pathologizing the context there. I'm saying, in case I'm in a context where those things are not available and I need to access my digital archive, a static website allows me to have it on my thumb drive, and my digital archive is available to people. So minimal computing is one way, I think, a practical way we can think about what it means to do DH in a context sometimes defined by constraints because of funding models and what have you. I'm sorry that took a bit long, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Apologies. Apologies to Mrs. Abishon Akishi. We will comment to her, but please, can you just take this last one for us? She said, I really like how you break DH down to simple understandable.
Bolo, you're struggling to hear you again, Bolo.
Jesus. Sorry, I really like how you break DH down into simple, understandable language. Based on the amazing work you have done so far, what digital humanities gaps do you know that upcoming?
Sorry, I can barely hear you, sir.
Bolo, don't worry. Let me take the question from
to
you.
hear.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that was from Abisola Akinshiku, one of our panelists. Give me a minute. Let me scroll back up. It was while you were speaking, Dr. Yeku, on the ideas around critical DH, and she said, "Thank you, Professor Yeku. I really like how you break down into simple, understandable language based on the amazing work you've done so far. What digital humanities gaps do you know that upcoming DH scholars could look into? I would appreciate some recommendations, especially in the area of digital archive. What archiving work can still be done in African literature?"
I mean, thank you, Abisla. Great question. I think the opportunities are enormous in the African context. And I say that as someone who has followed the debate around digital preservation in the last several years. There's so much about the cultural record in the African context that is not digitized. So there are a lot of things you can do. So, I mean, I gave some examples. I just talked about, imagine a digital archive that is dedicated. Abisla, I know Abisla, we're colleagues here, does literary studies. Imagine a DH project that is dedicated to looking at African novels that explore speciality and movements. So you create an archive on, say, a corpus of novels that basically do this, and you're tracking, you're basically mapping character movement and those kind of special categories to help people understand the novels more. That's one at the level of fiction. At the level of history, there's so much about our history that is not, that's not digitized. So we can start on that note, as a matter of fact. What Fuad is doing is really important. But the historical magazines, Kola Tubosun tried to work with Black authors recently. There are many other, print materials from different historical moments in the country that needs to be digitized. But I do want to say that creating digital archives and starting all of these digital initiatives, as much as I think we need to be doing those things, as much as I think they are good, I want to say that I am not romanticizing them. I do not think technology will save anyone, right? What I'm saying is that we need to sit with the ambivalence here. On the one hand, we are not visible, for example, to AI systems. We talk about how AI models erase African nuances, granular linguistic and cultural context of the continent in their data sets. We talk about that, but the reason that is there is because in the first place, AI systems and models need digitized materials to work with. So we do want to start by digitizing as many things as possible. We want to create digital archives, like Abisla is saying. But we have to do that knowing that to become vulnerable to, or rather to become legible to AI systems, to become vulnerable to, again, algorithmic colonization. So it's this tension we have to wrestle with, and it's one that we can, that has a complex history behind it, and we can go all the way back to, to the colonial era and its technologies of oppression.
Okay, we want to appreciate you, Dr. Yeko, for your time and for the insights you've shared. We want to go on a brief water/bathroom break. We've been online for 2 hours, thereabout, close to, and we like to encourage wellness on the GRC. So if you all could take a step back from your screen, take a stretch, take water, and fill a poll that we'll be administering shortly. We'll appreciate that.
Toby, could I just say that I'm sorry I have to leave to go pick my child from daycare, but I will say that please, my email is online. I'm happy to be in conversation with people. Send me an email. I'll be happy to take any particular question you have, and I'll be looking forward to learning from you guys too. Thank you so much.
Sure, we got you, sir. Thank you. So please, let's fill this poll. It's a simple, less than 5 minutes poll on what your perception about DH is from the conversations we've had so far. And as we transition to the last session with Abisola Kenshiku, we'd like to know what are the opportunities out there for DH research. All right, we have some responses. Thank you so much for those that participated. For those who are here to participate, we'll re-administer this poll at the end of the talk. We want to jump straight into the conversations. So far, we'll be listening to our colleagues at the University of Lagos and Kansas University talk to us about digital humanities, as well as opportunities in DH scholarship in Africa. Now we want to go into the nitty-gritty of how to do digital humanities from someone who does it actively on social media. And so it is with pleasure that I welcome Abisola Kinshiku to the floor. Abisola, over to you, please. Abisola, can you hear me? Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
So
great.
I'm just trying to share my screen already. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor Bokare, Professor Francis Bokare. I appreciate this invite. Professor Petundi Davis, thank you so much. I learned so much from listening to you and the amazing work that is being done in Lagos already. And Prof. James Yoko, my mentor, thank you so much. And the graduate research clinic and all the amazing people working there, thank you for organizing this. I have learned so much. I've written 2 pages from this already, so thank you for inviting me to learn and not just to just speak alone. So let me share my screen with you. I don't understand why it's asking me to share my entire screen though, but let's see. Where are we? Are you able to see my screen actually?
Yeah, we can see it. You can see your own screen though.
What part of my screen are you saying though?
Your Zoom
Okay.
interface.
Oh, give me a minute. Stop sharing. My computer is just being dramatic this morning. So give me a little minute to get this opened. All right, if my slide does not want to cooperate, then I would just have to use my mouse. So today, I just want to speak to you about social media as something that can be used. And we've heard so much from Dr. Yeku and Dr. Tunde Davis already, and we've heard very inspiring things about minimalist computation. And so I am bringing to you my own digital humanities story. Very simple, not anything special. It's not anything that is new, like even Professor Yeku said. It is just me helping you see how you can start something today. Yeah, that is the main thing with what I want to share with you. So, for me, it started in 2022 or so. On my slide, which is not showing, I showed a picture of me. I was like maybe 6 months pregnant.
Sorry,
And
Abisola, do you want me to share for you? Can you forward that document to me? I could share for you while you're talking.
okay, give me a minute, because where's the clinic? Just a minute. Hmm. Okay, I think I arced it actually. Can you see it now?
Perfect.
Oh, thank God, we made it. Okay, from digital archive to social media trend, performing everyday DH. So how do we perform everyday DH? So let's get to my story. You see that woman on the first slide, that is a made-up version of the one on the second slide. That was my photo shoot when I was pregnant with my second baby. And that was when, on that other side where I'm not made up with a cap, is when I was thinking about maybe pregnancy hormone, I don't know. I just felt a urge to do something online. And I've been reading people's blogs and interacting with social media a lot. I'm a very social media savvy person, right? And sometimes I think even to a fault. Yeah, but then I was thinking, how can I merge my idea of literature and my love for social media? And seriously, I didn't even consider what I was doing to be digital humanities at all. And that also reminded me of what Dr. James Jeku just said about people are actually doing a lot of digital humanities work in on ground in Africa, in Nigeria, across the continent. They may not even consider it to be DH project, but it is. So thinking about merging lead and social media, that slide you see on this first slide is my mom's legacy to me. My mom died in 2017, but she left me a lot of African texts. In fact, when I was moving to my husband's house, I had to pack loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of books because my mom was a literature teacher before she died. So I brought my mom's literary heritage into my matrimonial home. And I'm thinking, all these beautiful books I have. This is just one shelf of my book in Nigeria. And unfortunately, I could not even come with one of this, my very amazing library that my mom left for me. So I was thinking, what can I do with literature that I love? And my mom's legacy, and then my love for technology, right? So my sister came over. That's the girl you are seeing in the shadow. We took a lot of pictures, just covers, just fiction covers. You can see The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Lives, right? I'm sure many of you have read that text, fabulous text by Shonei, right? Lola Shonei. So that's one of the pictures that has refused to leave my mind amongst the number of pictures of book covers of African lit text that we took. And why does this picture stand out to me? That's a girl in a shadow doing something like a shush. We're just trying to be creative. How do we make people look at African text and enjoy it on social media or on a blog? Those were questions that we were asking. And so I decided to start Creative Climb. It's just a blog where I consider it to be a digital thought book on my adventures, writing, talking about books, talking about other things in my life and my musings, right? So that is just me starting something on the whims and on weeks, and it's free. There are so many blog opportunities and platforms that you can use right now today as I am speaking to you, like Wix, WIX, and this one that I have used here, that you can start something today actually. And this one is on WordPress. So consider WordPress, Wix, WIX as blogging platforms that you can actually start today, because that is the main thing that I came here to talk about. Okay, so this is a video. That other one, I hope I know how to play it at this point. It's just a video showing you where I'm sliding through my Creative Climb blog thing. And I was just talking about, I would talk about a lot of things, but then I will also talk about, look at that, on Black Sister Street, look at that, The Secret Lives of Baba Segi, I would write about it. Yeah. I didn't do a lot of work on this blog post though. I had to stop when I got admission to do my PhD here in the United States. Now, there is something very important about this project that I did. As little as this project is, it it was part of the reason why I got the opportunity to work with the history of Black writing, a foremost massive, important digital project here in the United States that is into the history of Black writing in the US. And it is not only in the US that they do their work, they have also digitized text from Africa. It was one of the reasons why they brought me on as a project coordinator at HBW. So, the foremost professor who started this project, She told me when I finally arrived that when I submitted my application and everything, she actually clicked the link because on my resume, I added the link to Creative Climb. Do you know that this amazing professor actually checked out my blog? And they felt like I want to assume that aside, there are so many things that gave me this opportunity, but creating something small and just being creative about it, just being enjoying myself, it created opportunity for me in a bigger space. And I was able to be involved in the outstanding research that they are doing here in the United States. This is the social media page, and they work with archives. They help you trace trends in literature, and they also have this very amazing project here, how to use the novel generator machine, where they can you can actually, this machine would give you ideas about books to read. Just tell it what you want, and then it will generate something for you. So to this very amazing audience that I'm talking to, I want you to start thinking about social media and African digital humanities, and think of social media as a tool that you can actually start using today. And I brought you many examples. I brought you a few, not many, a few examples of people who are actually doing that work right now. So, and why are we advocating for this merge between social media and digital humanities? It's because it provides digital accessibility. Absolutely anybody can see what you are doing on TikTok. Anybody can see what you are doing on Instagram. Anybody can see the work you are doing on Facebook, right? On even LinkedIn. Can somebody tell me if you can still hear me though?
Yeah, we're with you, Abisola. Loud
Amazing.
and clear.
Thank you. Thank
Can hear
you.
you.
Thank you. I know you know this girl. She went viral sometimes some years ago, right? To the girl in English class, right?
To the girl in English class,
Yeah.
what
Avi.
is funny? What is hilarious about my painful attempt to communicate in a language that is not even my own? So this accent tells a story of survival, tells how my mother tongue endured to this day, so I expect you treat my tongue with some respect. Every word, every syllable I utter comes from a riot within my mouth. Is about to the girl in English class, what is funny?
So we've all heard Avi. She went viral, right? Do you know that what Avi was talking about here is some kind of digital humanities project, in my view, that is tailored to social media? The conversation that Avi is bringing to social media and went viral because she has made it more accessible is the same argument that happened between Chinua Achebe and Ngugi wa Thiong'o about the use of language, even in literature. It's a variant of it, right? But she has helped to push that whole thing, this idea of accent and everything that we discuss even in my field, right? She brought it to social media and made it accessible digitally to everyday people. People were able to relate with the idea that she was talking about in that video. And that's something that I need you to think about as you think about digital projects. How can I make knowledge accessible to people? I love African lit. How can I make that my love of African lit accessible to other people? I also found other people who are doing amazing work on Instagram. I love Instagram, although Instagram does not love me anyways. This is Cindy Sola. Oh, this lady, she also puts her mouth into that how do we write in English or African language. She does it in that post that you can see here. Is writing in English. That's something she's discussing there. And this lady discusses critical epistemological ideas, theories, right? She would discuss theories in layman's language to a public audience, right? So she's distilling knowledge to a vast, she's taking knowledge away from the four walls of school to the public. And I consider that to be a huge project. Another big lady who is doing an amazing work on Instagram and TikTok. Her followership, look at her followership on Instagram. She has 238K followers on Instagram. You need to go check her right now. What does she do? I am going to show you. Look at this one here. You can see my cursor. This video she made here at 12.8 M views just on Instagram alone. Not even on TikTok is even more massive. And what does she talk about? She talks about the concept of African time. She breaks it down into something that the whole world can relate with. You listen to her for just a minute.
What if I told you that for many African societies, the concept of the future doesn't exist, and that instead of time moving forwards, time actually moves backwards? This was the work of John Mbiti, one of Kenya's and Africa's greatest philosophers. And in 1969, he wrote something that completely reimagines the way we think of African time.
Another video that she made that really went viral was when she public faced the idea of decolonization. Like, so many people have heard decolonization, but they don't even know what it really means in a layman's language, everyday Lagos street kind of phenomenon. This lady came up and explained it to us. One thing that she does that I really love, that I think I haven't really seen so many people doing it, is that she would actually also bring, you can see it right there on my screen, African religions and philosophy. She would put pictures of the books and the articles and the theorists, and she will put it on that video, meaning that she has taken big academic ideas. She's taking big academic ideas to the globe, to the public, for us to interact with. And people love it. Because sometimes we think that the things we do in academia, people are not really very interested in it, but they are interested in what we do. It is just that as Gen Z, I am not a Gen Z, but I like to tag along with Gen Z, right? How can we make the academic work we do? How can we bring it to the public? How can we Facebook it? How can we Instagram it? How can we TikTok it? Do you get what I mean? Right. And there are people who are doing excellent work already that we can look at, that we can mimic, that we can learn from. Look at our statistics from Instagram alone. As at the time I was making this slide, she already has 12.8 million views of that video, that short video that is not supposed to be more than 90 seconds. She already had 11.2K comments from all over the world. If you go into our comment section, you see people from Japan, China, everybody started contributing they said, oh my God, it reminds me of something in my culture too. It reminds me of something in my own culture too. She had 47.9K reposts on Instagram alone of that post, and she had 185,000 shares of that video, right? So I am bringing to you today, you can start something phenomenal that is also, that can be categorized as digital humanities. You don't have to wait. You should learn coding as needed. You should digitize. I have also been into digitization projects. You should do all of that. But what other things can we do today, like bookstagramming, book talk, creating social media accessibility for ideas, that then we take ideas beyond the four walls of school. So I brought pictures from my creative time on Instagram, right? I have not been doing a lot of work on here since I started my PhD, but I just wanted to show you. Look at that. I just have pictures of books. I talk about them and people love it. There are people on Instagram who have done even better work than I have done, and they have massive followership. And the work they are doing is very, very important. So this is my question to you today. What can you do with the resources you have right now? Did you see that I put right now in red letters? There is a reason why I have done that, because I want you to be thinking of what can I start right now? What can I do right now? And the thing with starting small is that it will take you to great places. It will open bigger doors for you. So I'll just say start from where you are. Do you get it? Let us start from where we are. So thank you for listening. My name is Abdullah Kishiku. Thank you for listening. Stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Abisola. That was really brilliant. Do you know the first time I listened to that lady's video, I thought it was an AI make made video. And some of my friends said, no, 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 no. And as a matter of fact, one of my friends had the inspiration to start a book reading club because of that video. He started reading, I'm going to give you a Tongo's works and all of that. And I think that is one of the things that digital humanities can kickstart or can inspire. Thank you once again, Abisola, for bringing that to our attention. So right now, we want to take any final questions and comments before we have our chairperson, Buhari, wrap us off. Any questions from anyone? I noticed some questions in the chat earlier. I'll just scroll back up a bit to read some of them. Okay, there was this question. I don't know if it was for you or for Dr. Yeku, but I know you could handle it. It's on secondary schools. Just give me a minute. Let me get to that. I have to expand my chart. So please give me a minute. Or if you ask that question, I think it was Treasures or someone who asked that question, please feel free to raise up your hand and re-ask. Yeah, it had to do with something about supporting deaf children or something in secondary school. Just I have it at times calling up with this course. So, do-do-do. Yeah, okay, so someone has answered the question. Dr. Yeko had answered the question around platforms for Igbo textbooks, and I think this question came after that. Okay, yeah. So the question says contextually, what can we mesh or in syrup form of digital humanities for primary and secondary school students, especially for our deaf adolescents who are visual learners, storytellers? I would love you to take a stab at that question. Have this all right if you don't mind. Then we can have Perso Aguari wrap us up. How about that?
Well, that's a serious question, and I don't have an answer right now. I think Prof should just take it.
Okay, yeah, okay. But before Prof comes up, I just wanted to say that one of the things that I'm personally drawing from all of the presentations we've listened so far is this intuitive method of starting DH. So DH doesn't have to be the Achebe archives, doesn't have to be archiving or lecturing time. It could be archiving your local, folklores back home. It could be even from your family history, which is one of the things I'm beginning to do. I have an aunt who's writing a book on our family history, our Afro-Brazilian ancestry. And I just suggested to her, give me the maps, give me the images, give me all the audio-visual materials you have. Let us think of making this into an archive. And probably people might read that after reading the book or even before reading the book. And like you said, Abisola, some people may never engage with their academic publications, but what they have are social media, handles and all of those things. So just to attempt an answer to that question, you could encourage those secondary school students to begin to collect materials from their schools, collect materials from their homes, collect materials from their teachers, and make it into a mosaic of ideas around what you're learning. And I also think that there are initiatives in different states. I know the Lagos state government has this read a book initiative for children where they encourage children authors to come and talk about their book. And we have a lot of children authors in Nigeria now. So that would be my own suggestion for the person who's asking this question. But we'd like to have Prof. So and Buhari wrap us up. Prof, are you still with us?
Well, what do you think?
Thank you for staying.
It's been very, very interesting. When I listen to the last speaker, I just tell myself how fortunate this generation is in terms of the definition of knowledge and the access to information. The whole world is there, the knowledge is out there. I think the problem sometimes is that intellectuals think that they have to be intellectually complex. The pursuit of excessive sophistication, whereas the best kind of sophistication is in simplicity. Yeah, so what happens basically is because we have this fixation, epistemic fixation that blinds us to opportunities right before us. So my first thing, I mean, this is what I'm learning, is to say we have a lot to do. Let's first of all also start with structuring information, and then of course cascading on the rank of simplicity, so we can also get down to the level of the young people, as Toby was talking about. Digital humanities is not only for it's a public discourse, it's a public knowledge system. It's not just for people with some kind of aspirational sophistication. We can get it so that we can begin to accumulate knowledge, and people can begin to work their way up as they grow and begin to discover new knowledge epistemes and so on. The second issue is basically we need to have an agenda. We always complain about being recolonized. There are things we complain about being subjugated. But what is our agenda as a people? Agenda as nations, agendas as institutions? If the agenda is simply copying base, mimicking, then we probably don't know what the value of these technologies are and what we can do with them. So we have to have an agenda. And then we have to ask ourselves questions. What are our priorities? How do we proceed? Without having an agenda, defining your priorities is a big problem about how to proceed. Now, when I ask my students to do projects in digital humanities, I almost have, for many of them, I almost have to also think for them. But I have a lot of projects. For instance, I'm working on oral narratives. I shouldn't be worrying about that. I should be worrying about my retirement and how to get money to survive when I'm retired. But I still have to. I'm working on the oral narratives of my community that I collected over a period of 25 years. You can imagine how easier it is today to collect these narratives, riddles, conversations, stories. And we're trying to look at these stories and create new tropes, scientific tropes, trying to find exactly what are the knowledge systems that are embedded in these oral narratives. And then, of course, even if you just want to have it for enjoyment, for people to enjoy it and to learn about their cultures and so on, how to demystify what was basically a knowledge system. So it's important. There are things to do. I'm also trying to create a narrative on something that I call a broken bottle, which is basically a cataloging of village life in such a way that we can illustrate and people can see exactly what it meant to live in the village. Because we are losing those stories. There are pictures we took as young people, as members of photographic clubs. They are resting everywhere. What I'm trying to say here is that there is too much to do in terms of the lifespan, in terms of how long we have to live. So digital humanities, what it does is a key. It gives you a key to a door, to a new kind of life and access to new kinds of information system. So we also have to look at the kinds of skills that people need. Simple skills, not really being too sophisticated sometimes, may just be simply photography skills. It may just be simple skills like doing learning some tools that will enable you to start from simple things. And institutions must learn to value this simplicity, simple skills, before people can because it should be what will determine exactly what you do should be because of the needs that arise from the work that you're already doing. So we have to look at skills categories that are required, what gaps exist, how do we bridge the gap, how do we couple the skills for partnership, and then of course, what is the cost benefit of digital analysis in our system, and that will help us to determine exactly how we should proceed. Ladies and gentlemen, I think for me, this is one of the best presentations that I've attended in a long time where I'm not speaking. You know, people are very polite. Nigeria, I mean, the global intellectual community is very polite. Even when you say, I always tell people, they say, "How did your presentation go?" I say, "Well, when were they clap for me?" But the point basically is that I'm being serious here. That I have really thoroughly enjoyed these presentations from the team, the three members of this team. Abisola, you've been wonderful. And I'm glad that you are doing a wonderful job. And for the audience, thank you very much. GRC, thank you for giving me this opportunity to sit on the chair. They say I'm a chairman, so the man is supposed to be on the chair. Thank you, Toby, and the GRC community. It's been a wonderful time spent. I hope this opens the mind of a lot of young people who are part of this conversation today. It's been a wonderful one. And God bless you all. Thank you very much.
God bless you too, Prof. And keep thinking about that retirement, because I'm sure you know you're coming back. So I'd like to invite everyone to please turn on their camera so we can take a snapshot of this event and connect with one another. We at the GRC foster networking amongst early career researchers and academics across the world. And regardless of what disciplinary background you're in, we want to hear from you, we want to engage you, and we want to spotlight your work too. So if you could put on your cameras, we could take a quick snapshot. Bolu, can you do that from your end?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Right. Okay, and we also just want to encourage those who might not have heard of the GRC. The GRC is the Graduate Research Clinic. We're a platform of scholars, students, academics across the world, and we have conversations like this on a regular basis. So if you would like to join us, please sign up via the link that was shared a couple of times. I will be posting that link again, and we'd like to hear from you. Also, we'd like to say that this event will continue on a bi-monthly basis, and Dr. Yeko has encouraged us to, engage other practitioners, especially likes of Fuad Lawal and co. I want to know that the team is actively working on a digital humanities fellowship for African researchers, and that's why we have collaboration with CEDHUL and Kansas University. So you'll be interested in working with us on building a digital humanities network. There is already a network at Center for African Studies, what's it called? Center for Digital Humanities at UNILAG. But we want to have people participate in doing different DH projects. So the GRC will be reaching out to you shortly. Please engage and support us. With that said, on behalf of the GRC team, I want to thank you all for your time, and Professor Igwari has indeed said, yes?
I think only a few people responded, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. You mean the poll?
No, the video now, like to turn
Oh,
on
okay.
their
No,
videos.
it's okay. We can just take for those who have their
Okay,
videos on. Yeah, I mean it's a virtual
done.
event, so
Yeah.
if you would
Okay.
like to put on your videos, please feel free to. If you don't want to, you're not obliged to. Thank you. And thank you for reminding me to re-administer the poll. So we'll be sharing the poll shortly, the one we shared earlier, just to get a sense of what everybody is taking away from this discourse, and also to encourage you all to look out for opportunities in DH. So once again, thank you for attending and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Miss
thank you. Bye,
Abisola.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Yeah, good
you.
evening, Professor Boy.
Bye,
Good evening.
Abisola. Good to
Bye.
see you.
Yes, it's Alejandro.
Great. Agree,
Alejandro.
my brother.
Oh, bro.
Alejandro, I can barely see you.
Prof, I am also barely visible, sir.
Abisola, how are you doing?
Is it a Guinness? Is it a Guinness or which one? They barely
Uh,
seeing me.
it's a cowrie shell, a long black cowrie shell, sir. Yeah, nice to see everyone. Yeah, have a good evening.
Bisola, good to see you.
Thanks, my brother. How you doing?
Cool, I'm good. You are good,
It's good to
dear.
see
You are
you.
good.
It's good to see you. Absolutely.
Anyway, I will chat you up via
Yes.
your Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Yes.
you very much.
You're
You
welcome.
presented very brilliantly. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you, my brother. Thank you.
So, do I have the permission to end the